Karoline Leavitt, the poised and diligent secretary of the White House press team, had seen her fair share of high-stakes situations, but nothing could have prepared her for what awaited her in the quiet suburbs of Alexandria, Virginia. What began as a mundane errand spiraled into a sinister puzzle that would push Karoline's investigative instincts and her courage to their limits. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below and please like the video. Thank you. The day began with an unexpected phone call. A former journalist acquaintance had tipped Karoline off about a peculiar set of files related to a long-buried scandal that could shake the White House. Intrigued, Karoline decided to retrieve the files herself. The informant had asked her to meet at a nondescript house in a sleepy cul-de-sac. It was supposed to be discreet, simple, but when she parked her car near the driveway of the designated address, trouble came knocking almost immediately. The homeowner, a middle-aged woman with an unmistakable air of entitlement, stormed out onto her porch. Known to the neighbors as Liberal Karen, she was infamous for her loud opinions, endless complaints, and an uncanny knack for escalating the smallest inconveniences. Spotting Karoline's car partially blocking her driveway, Karen wasted no time dialing 911. "This is an emergency!" Karen screeched into the phone. "Some government car is blocking my property. It's probably some sort of abuse of power." Karoline, who had been waiting patiently in her car, noticed Karen's growing hysteria and stepped out to address her. She introduced herself, explained she'd only be a moment, and even offered to move the car. But Karen, fueled by a mix of suspicion and self-righteousness, refused to listen. The police arrived swiftly, a patrol car pulling up with lights flashing. Karoline calmly explained the situation, her diplomatic skills on full display. She had the officer's attention until Karen insisted they investigate the house Karoline was about to enter. "She's up to something," Karen declared, pointing a trembling finger. "You need to check that place out." Karen's insistence was enough to pique the officer's curiosity, and with Karoline's reluctant agreement, they approached the house together. What they found inside would change the course of Karoline's life, and possibly the nation's future. The door was slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Papers were scattered across a desk in the living room, and the faint smell of stale coffee lingered in the air. Karoline's heart raced as she spotted the envelope her informant had described. But before she could grab it, the officer called her attention to something chilling, a wall covered in photographs and notes, many of which featured prominent political figures, including Karoline herself. The room was a crude but unmistakable command center, filled with surveillance equipment and detailed notes on movements, meetings, and private conversations. It was clear that whoever lived here had been conducting covert operations, and the implications were staggering. Karen, who had followed them inside despite protests, froze in the doorway. Her usual bravado melted into shock as she realized the magnitude of what she had unwittingly stumbled into. The envelope, which Karoline finally retrieved, contained not only the files she had come for, but also additional evidence of a deep conspiracy. The house's occupant had been gathering dirt on White House staff and other influential figures for years, feeding information to unknown parties. Worse still, the informant who had sent Karoline there was nowhere to be found. As Karoline sifted through the evidence, a chilling realization dawned on her. She wasn't dealing with a single rogue operative. This was part of a much larger operation, one that might involve some of the most powerful people in Washington. Karen, still standing in stunned silence, muttered, I didn't know. I thought—" Karoline turned to her, her voice firm. "This isn't about you, Karen, but your call to 911 might have just saved lives, or put us all in danger." By the time federal agents arrived, summoned by Karoline's discreet call to her White House contacts, the house was swarming with activity. Evidence was cataloged, questions were asked, and the neighborhood watched in stunned silence. Karen, still in shock, gave a rambling statement about her intentions. But the real mystery remained unsolved. Who was the occupant of the house? Where had they gone? And how far did this conspiracy reach? For Karoline, the answers to those questions would demand more than her skills as a press secretary. She would need to rely on her wit, her resilience, and her connections to uncover the truth. When Karen reached out, Karoline was hesitant to involve her further, but Karen had information that Karoline couldn't ignore. "I remember the man who lived there," Karen said during a tense phone call. "He told me he worked in tech, but he was always gone at odd hours, and there was a black SUV that would pick him up every week, late at night. I thought it was strange, but I never said anything." Karen's description of the man matched the one image Karoline had found on the surveillance wall, a middle-aged man with glasses and a military bearing. John ran the photo through a facial recognition database and got a hit. David Langston, a former NSA operative who had gone off the grid 5 years ago. "Langston's a ghost," John said. "If he's involved, this operation is bigger than we thought. And if he's gone underground, someone wanted him out of sight." As Karoline and John pieced together the puzzle, the threats against them escalated. Their safe house was compromised, forcing them to relocate. Karen, despite her initial fear, became an unlikely ally, sharing details about the neighborhood and the strange visitors who had come and gone from Langston's house over the years. The breakthrough came when John decrypted the final message to Raven. It contained coordinates for a remote location in West Virginia, along with a single chilling line. Realizing they were racing against time, Karoline and John set out for the location, determined to uncover the truth. But as they approached the remote site, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The shadowy organization was always one step ahead, and Karoline knew that the answer she sought might come at a dangerous cost. In a world where power is bought and sold, trust is a rare commodity. And the closer Karoline got to the truth, the more she realized that even those she trusted might have secrets of their own.